In this episode, I'm going to break down the Q2 earnings for Tesla and what a quarter it was. I think the question, and maybe you're asking this, is does your thesis still hold? We're recording this a couple days after the earnings call, and I've been asking myself the same exact question. I've listened to the call twice, read the transcript, looked at the releases, and just keep coming back to pretty much the same thesis. So we're going to step through the Q2 earnings. First of all, my comments, and I'll call these out as we go through some of the numbers. There was a couple things that were just really, I called surprising to me. Surprising in the sense that, one, do a little bit better, Tesla. You're $1 trillion company. Just the construct of the earnings call, it really seemed to be, they're entertaining, never the strongest. I think I would hold a $1 trillion company to a little bit higher standard than me, one man with a mic with a small YouTube channel. I think the quality in that content was a little bit lacking and a little more specific. So I'm going to call those out as we go into it. But what did you think? At this point, I think if you've been a Tesla shareholder for a long time, I kind of have. I'm I am a Tesla share owner, not a major part of my portfolio, but I really enjoy the company and the prospects of the future. Whole reason, everything that we do here on investing in innovation. And by the way, I'm Tom, the investing tiger. Thank you for listening. But here's what I think. I keep coming back to this. We are in a what I call it's a bull trap and a bear trap. You seldomly see that happen simultaneously, really, on the same company. At least not my experience. What I mean by that is, if you're really bullish, a Tesla fanboy, well, you've been in this boy who cries wolf environment. No, this is going to be the quarter we break through. We get the announcement on fill in the blank Optimus Robotaxi, and the stock's going to re-rate. And I understand if you've had heavy exposure, been hearing these stories for 3, 4, 5 years, you build up this anticipation. It's kept us in this trading range of what was 340 to 440. Now we're a little bit lower. We're going to probably test 300. I'll talk about that. Well, then here come the bears. Well, the perma bears are like, this is, you know what I'm talking about, the forecasts. The forecast that said this stock is going to under 100. There used to be one $10 years back. Well, none of that's happened. It just won't, it stays stuck in this crosshair. So I would, my one talking point describing the quarter is, a lot of times people will say Tesla is more than a car company, and I think it is. Well, I think you have to expect a quarter like this if you really believe that. And that's what we saw when it comes down to a CapEx spend. If you want to be more than a car company, these are the things you're going to have to spend money on. We saw that play out in the form of a train wreck after this earnings release, because this was not the market that was going goo goo gaga over CapEx spending. And this was not the week to pull that off. So let's take a look. I'm looking at the shareholder deck. Me and my dog Radish have been looking at this constantly, batting questions back and forth. I've been talking to a lot of people on X about this. And by the way, if you are on X, let's connect. You can find me at the Investing Tiger on X as well. I talk about this content pretty much nonstop. So here we've got, I think this is a good news story and a bad news story. If you're looking at, is this going to re-rate or send the stock in this quarter? Not good news. Not good news. What we did see, what I did like from a near-term prospect, remember where we were 6 months ago. We saw a complete breakdown, maybe a year ago, a complete erosion in auto sales domestically and especially worldwide. We had a little brand reputation risk going on. That was a big question. So step back to where we were, let's call it a year ago, which was a good comparison to this quarter. But we've seen that kind of resolve itself. Consumers are flocking to what they perceive as a great product at a great value, when petrol over in Europe is not a very good value thanks to ongoing geopolitical risks. So we saw a complete reshape there. Shows up here in total automotive revenues, up 23%. All other services and goods also up 50%. Energy generation up margin a little bit too. So all in all, a 26% increase in total revenues year over year over last quarter looks really good too. So it sounds like you've got a good setup going into an earnings call, but this is where things really break down. Margins start dropping. So we saw total GAAP gross margin down 41 beeps. That doesn't sound good. All I know, the last few quarters hasn't been too much expectation on overall margins, but we're going to go down the line items here, and I will put this. This is in the description, the full deck. We're only going to look at a couple of slides. I'm going to share some comments on the big businesses that are going to really make or potentially break the Tesla thesis. So we keep going down. This is where we start seeing the adjusted EBITDA is 11.6%, down 353 basis points. We go a little bit further down. We keep seeing a lot of negatives here. And then we get the first big story that really started spooking Wall Street and retail investors is this: the free cash flow, negative $1 billion, an almost $6 billion spend on CapEx in the quarter alone, up 140% year over year. It also equates to about the last 2.5 quarters of CapEx all in one. My God, what are they spending the money on? And when will it return capital? That's why we see the stock flirting with $300, and it very well could go to $270 or $280 on this leg. All right, let's get more into the nuts and bolts, the guts here of what actually went out the door, what was produced in Q2. Car sales, the 3 and Y, outstanding, pristine, big turnaround, nice jump year over year, going in the right direction from the quarter. Delivery wait times continue to go up. I'm seeing 5 to 7 weeks now if you want a new Y at times, 3 to 5 weeks. So backlog and a little bit of maybe even pipeline concern of materials. This has just been a big turnaround and increase. Total deliveries up 480. Let me just touch on the other models production. When I see that big decrease with like the X no longer in production, that probably explains it. So the other model production is probably just fallen in the category of the Cybertruck right now. All right, so a couple of other numbers here. I want to talk about these because this starts getting into one of the near-term drivers that people have been holding their hat on, that where it's going to re-rate. Cumulative deliveries. This is a pretty cool number. We hit 9.7 million. So let's just do the math. Sometime in this quarter, some lucky person out there ordering a Tesla is going to be the 10 millionth delivery of a Tesla. I wonder if they're going to plan a special event around that. Does Elon deliver it personally? Lars, someone like that. Let's see what they do. But we'll hit that milestone. And that is a big milestone. But let's play some milestone history with Tesla. I don't have the exact dates, but I remember it at least 5, maybe 6 years ago. We're hitting 10 million in Q3 of this year. I would say about 6 or 7 years ago, we were hearing numbers, we'll hit 20 million. So I think this just goes to show when numbers are quoted and they're forward looking, this is how it shows up. I think you have to have a little bit of temper your expectations when you go back and forth. All right, this next number is real impressive. This is the active SSD subscriptions, $99 a month, up 56% year over year. Big increase from last quarter. Now, if you listen to the call, read the transcript, this is where it gets confusing. So there was a soundbite that I found very catching, and I had to go back and reconstruct it. I got excited at first until I thought about it a little bit more. So Laura said the take rate, and this is really important, the take rate is 55%. on cars. But I'm wondering, you think about that a little bit more. That's just like a headline number. I always question the headline. 55% of what? 55% of all new cars being delivered? What about cars, the other 9 million or so that are fully deployed? What's going on there? And then the bigger question is, they do disclose that does break out the 1 month free trial. But the number I really want to look at is what happens after that 1 month free trial ends. Is it sticky? Is it staying? I think all in all, it's pretty good. But that was the first example of a big number that was thrown out that just made me question a little bit. So we'll just break down here. This takes things step by step through the different businesses. Obviously, worldwide, this is just automotive capacity. On an annual basis, plenty of capacity exists to build out. So that's not the story with Tesla. But why is the stock suffering so much? And why do I think it's going to continue staying in this range? Before Q2, my trading range was probably 340 to 440, and it would stay in that range for quite some time. You've heard me say that if you've listened to the last couple of episodes. I don't see a re-rate coming until something takes place. I'm going to update my trading range now. I think now we're back in this maybe 270 to 370, 380 range. That's probably where we're going to play near term. And there's an additional factor that makes it a little bit more confusing. A potential merger with SpaceX. So let's talk about that for a minute. How is that impacting the stock? Well, since the earnings call, I've heard some really good theories, conspiracy theories, whatever you want to call it, like what's going on and what's going to play out. So let me cover theory one. So Elon was talking about this. Maybe you heard it. Maybe it hasn't really gotten much attention. He did mention progress is being made on Terafab. We're not going to make an announcement on this call or get into it much more. It was just an optimistic, forward-looking statement. But he said separately, pretty soon there's going to be another call specific to that it deserves its own environment. Okay, makes sense. Sounds big. So it's a classic case of the setup, right? It's get the expectations a little bit high. But the interesting part, how this relates to SpaceX, is I've seen a lot of people I respect too, saying, this could mean one thing. This is it. This is the merger announcement, because Terafab, there's going to be so much synergy. There's so much synergy that we know about. And I talked about this in the merger episode. The whole synergy story, this is it. Latching on to that. I don't know. I still don't know if that's the case, but I think that's what gets us into this position with Tesla. If you've owned it for so many years, is this one soundbite comes out, there's nothing material to back it up, speculation takes over, and it just doesn't play out as we expected. It feels like that's the case with me. So one, what do I think is really happening? I think a Terafab, a specific facility is going to be announced where chip production can take place. Maybe a big announcement in Grimes County, called a ribbon cutting ceremony at this point, but an announcement in that aspect. But some people are taking it as, well, this is going to be the merger with SpaceX. This all makes sense. It's lining up. This is the setup. And by the way, they're going to try to coincide it. This is where it gets really interesting and will either be proven right or wrong pretty quickly. The theory is it will coincide or align with the SpaceX earnings call on August 4th. We'll see about that. We're only a couple weeks away from that. I wouldn't hold my hat on it. Okay, the second thing really comes down to robotaxi, and I want to spend some time talking about that. I'm going to talk about robotaxi, I'm going to talk about Optimus, and just tie this back up again. So the robotaxi thing is probably the most head-scratching thing that we heard on the call and what we're seeing play out and roll out day in and day out. So Elon mentioned this, Ashok mentioned this. In Q2, I think this is a big departure from what we heard just a couple of quarters ago. Did you pick up on this if you've listened to the call? It seems like safety Safety, we heard that so many times. That's the prevailing, that's the KPI on the rollout. A couple of quarters ago, it was more bumping out miles. That was the milestone when it came to full self-driving. And those are two big different metrics that you want to roll out. So if you want to roll robotaxi out safely, makes total sense. Put a couple cars out there in a small geo-fenced area and just log a few miles and keep it safe. Hey, I appreciate it. You and I both know what's going to happen. There is a very high bar expectation specifically with Tesla. One bad incident sets robotaxi back, at least from a public perception standpoint. And future legislation. You have one bad incident in the US, guess what? The whole EU probably breaks down. They're not going to approve this. And the way the EU votes, I think you need something like 65% of members of the population to approve something to pass it. You lose a couple big countries because there's a bad headline over FSD. Guess what happens? No FSD in Europe. And I think, and correct me Europeans that listen if I'm wrong, I think in that case, other countries like Belgium or Netherlands that have approved FSD, I think they have to retract it. So I get play it safe. But here's the number that really changed. I mean, this is another number that was thrown out. Elon mentioned it and Shook mentioned it too, was they're continuing to see a 10% week over week increase. And then they confused another number. The total number of FSD unsupervised miles right now is 380,000 miles all time over a little over a year. So the classic case where you put two numbers together that may or may not relate. So is that 10% every week off the 380? It's not a huge number, but a much different number. Is it 10% over ratcheting up what you're doing on a weekly basis, which I think it is, which gets to a very small odometer creep, that 380,000 mile total. I think it's that. What I mean is, if you did 1,000 miles last week, the next week you compound 10% off the 1,000 miles, not the 380,000 miles. Different. It's the same math, just off a different number. That was my main. I think Tesla, for $1 trillion company, can do such a better job delivering a key message in their earning calls in a pivotal quarter. And what I mean by that is I think they had a great story to tell, how they're taking advantage, getting public appeal, selling cars right now as a car company, showcasing, spotlighting how that operation's going, how it's improving so much from where they are last year. But then also tying the why to the story. So they knew they spent $6 billion this quarter. They knew there was going to be negative free cash flow. They did not know that, not just them, look at Google. Intel is even starting to lose its charm. You start spending money, and Wall Street right now is questioning the return on capital. I sure wish they painted around the story more specifically in what they're seeing, that this spend, connect the dots, connect the dots for us. You're spending this, give us the full bridge. Where do you think it's going to take us? What do you think the return's going to be? Other than vague comments, this will be the biggest thing ever. I think that's still a little bit questionable. I think we got to get beyond that stage. So I'm going to wrap it up this way. I'm going to say one last thing. I said I'd talk about Optimus. So the whole Terafab facility hasn't even been announced yet. Optimus is 3 years away from being monetized. To maybe 2028 it shows up, but I'd say 3 years. Let's give us a little bit more runway. So when we start seeing 10 million robots, we're really at nothing right now. So to get from nothing to 10 million, that path is going to be bumpy. I think it will be smoother than what we're seeing with robotaxi, because you don't have as much really legislation, safety concerns. That's the big concern that they just told us about in this quarter with robotaxi. You're not going to have that with Optimus. They just go out there and work on the front line or whatever. So I think where we'll start seeing acceleration, what I'd be looking for is for a near-term event with Optimus is, one, take a look at the pictures online on X. You can find them. The big gigafactory is being built in Texas. It's I think there's a few steel beams up at this point. It's going to be a 1 million square foot plant, but it's not operational. It could take almost a year just to build that out. That's where I think that's where you're going to start getting a lot of capacity. So there's going to be some time for that rollout. So it's not going to optimize real quickly there. But what I would be looking for is this Optimus Academy Elon was talking about. This is where they build the robots internally, and then through AI5 chips and everything, they can actually teach the robots in their academy how to perform tasks. That would be the next big milestone that over the next couple of quarters I'd like to see take place, where maybe there's, I don't know, 1,000 robots in the academy. That's what I'd play at. So I keep coming back. It just reaffirms my position in Tesla. So I've owned Tesla for 5+ years. It's just kind of like a little side bet. And I've shared here that I've only started getting a little more aggressive, regularly buying Tesla, which I still am going to. My thesis holds, but it reconfirms my story. I'm going to have to bump out the goalpost a little bit more. I still think this is, I've been saying it's 1,000-day story for a few months now. I think it's still 1,000-day story. I'm going to have to restart that clock again. What I heard supports my long-term thesis. What I heard also in this call probably supports the long-term frustration that Tesla shareholders have heard. We've heard this story time and time again, and now we've got the whole speculation around the SpaceX merger, the depreciation in the stock. Are they internally slow playing things over on the Tesla side of the house, Optimus, the robo-taxi rollout, to make in a way, make the deal go through a little bit cheaper, or the pricing cheaper? So you start getting these conspiracy theories of trust. We'll see. In the next episode, we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to get back to SpaceX, talking about that as it continues to go through its price discovery. And I'm going to share, hopefully in the next week or two, my first robo-taxi ride. So I'm going to one of these geo-fenced areas in Florida where robo-taxi is in service. We're going to actually see if it's in service, to see what is going on there. I think the better way I'm thinking of robo-taxi rollouts right now is, it's not a robo-taxi rollout, it's a robo-taxi rollout. It feels like it's just a handful of cars in each geo area right now. So thanks for listening. We appreciate it. If you like this type of content, I appreciate subscribing and hitting the like button, and leave your comments on what you think. I appreciate it.